But yeah, welcome you guys. This webinar is the Plant-Based Paradise webinar. So we're going to be talking through some plant-based trends. So if you guys don't know me, I'm Renee Lee Wege. I'm part of the trend spotting team at Data Essential. And I've been covering a lot of plant-based trends lately. Just so much that we're seeing, and especially I'm at a conference right now and it's all food and food editors. So we've been seeing a lot, and we'll actually see some of the products that I've been seeing recently. But I'm joined by my good friend, and I think probably the healthiest eater I know. I ask Marie all the questions about this potato versus that potato versus what should I be eating. Introducing Marie Molde, registered dietitian. I always love that too. I'm like, I always say like, well, I know a nutritionist.
Yeah, that was so fun back in the day, Renee, when we used to sit by each other in the Chicago office. And
oh my gosh, it seems like ages ago.
it really does. But those were good times. And yeah, hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks for tuning in to our webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the first PSA I think we have is, as I mentioned, make sure if you want to go to the next, we say this all the time, but make sure you hit that chat to everyone. Tell us where you're tuning in from. If you missed the first few minutes, we're actually broadcasting live from, I'm in Santa Barbara right now. I have a flight in 2 hours. So I will hopefully make that. And Marie, you're in Alaska right now?
I'm in Alaska right now. Yeah, it's still dark here. It's snowing. It looks like a snow globe outside. So yeah, you and I are in two very different locations today.
Yes. So this is a very special webinar.
Yeah.
All right. I think you have some follow-up from, so we're going to talk about the next webinar, actually. Yeah. So you guys get a little bit of a break for Thanksgiving and the holidays. Our next webinar, mark your calendars, is not going to be until December 15th. And I don't know about you guys, but so Jack has been talking about this movie called Paddington. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I think on my break, I am going to watch that because I'm tired of like always being like, no, I haven't watched it yet, Jack.
Yeah.
You watched it, Marie?
That's a good idea, Renee. I totally support that. I watched it early on, I think after Jack's first mention, because he was so persuasive. I was like, this movie's got to be really good. And it has my full endorsement too. I've actually already watched it twice, so both of them twice through. So very worthwhile way to spend your time.
Okay, so we got plenty of time, everyone, to watch both Paddingtons before December 15th, our next webinar.
Totally. Yeah, and we hope you join us then. And I guess before we get into the meat of today's content, which is plant-based trends, we wanted to take a second and revisit a topic that we talked about 2 weeks ago on the last webinar. So if you tuned in with us then, you'll remember Jack and Beth and Amanda talked us through what we're calling sort of this great shortening, or this idea that restaurants are really decreasing the amount of hours that they're open in any given day or week. In case you missed that webinar, this chart here gives a good really overview of what's happening. So with these two lines represented here, the blue line represents restaurant operating hours in sort of our last normal year of 2019. And then the red line represents operating hours this year. So you start to see that the blue line is above the red line a lot of the time here. So that means that restaurants were open more so 3 years ago. So if you look at breakfast time, say choosing a breakfast around 8 a.m., 30% of restaurants were open at that time 3 years ago. And today it's only 27.5% or so. And then as you go on in the day, you start to see even bigger differences. So especially when we hit like that dinner hour, or especially so that evening day part, 9:45 and later, restaurants really they're not open as much as they used to be. Renee, have you noticed this trend happening in Chicago?
It has, and actually even more so in Santa Barbara. It might just be a California thing, and I'm not, I haven't visited in a while, but a lot of the places here were only open for dinner from like only dinner and like 4 to 9. Like yesterday we were out at dinner and last call for food was at 8:30, even though we had a reservation at 8.
Wow.
So it might just be, I mean, California folks, feel free to chime in. Maybe it's just something I'm not familiar with, like a shorter hours, but definitely I think people are cutting back, as we're seeing like everywhere.
Totally. Yeah. And so on average, it looks like restaurants are open about 6.5 fewer hours every week compared to what they used to be. So for operators, that means that they really have to be more efficient than they used to be. So they're open for less time. So they sort of need to accomplish more with less these days in that way. And for consumers, I think for a lot of us, and I've had this experience in Seattle, where I live, it's like you try and order food for dinner or visit a restaurant for dinner, and you're sort of greeted with a sign that says this restaurant isn't open in the evenings anymore. So it really is a big shift that's happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we can look at the trend by state level. So if you remember back when Data Central was talking about restaurant closures happening around the country, so Washington, D.C. led on a state level, or kind of a state level. I guess they're a bit different, but they were leading the pack with restaurant closures. And they're also leading the pack with a decreased amount of restaurant operating hours. So they're joined by places like Vermont and Minnesota in that way. And then Alaska has this kind of strange outlier as one state that's actually increased operating hours. But you can see here, by far, most states have decreased the amount that they're open. And that's at a state level. And we can also look at that data by neighborhood level. And we start to see some really interesting differences happen. So what we did here is look at among really large zip codes across the country, we took the top 15 to see what neighborhoods, what cities are reducing their restaurant operators or restaurant operating hours the most. And so I think 12 of the 15 here are in New York City. And so that's not
crazy.
Yeah, and not so surprising because people aren't commuting as much and tourism is down. But one here's in Washington State and one is in, I think, New Orleans. But Renee and I, so if you remember 2 weeks ago, Jack left you all with a cliffhanger. He didn't announce what the number one neighborhood is with the biggest decrease in restaurant operating hours. So if luck is on our side today, Renee and I have a poll here that we wanted to launch here. So I will see if this works. Click launch. And we wanted to see if you all could guess which neighborhood you think. It popped up?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Oh, cool. So it looks like we have some votes rolling in. Glad this worked. All right. So maybe we'll give it just 10 more seconds or so to see what people are thinking.
Yeah. So which neighborhood had the biggest reduction in restaurant hours? This is a good selection too, kind of all across the board here. So
yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, and you can put in chat too, what people are thinking. And we both know the answer, so I won't ask you what you think, Marie.
Yeah, same.
It won't be fair. And it says I can't vote, so.
I do want to ask you for your thoughts though, Renee. So let's see. I think most of the votes are in at this point. So I will go ahead and end this poll.
Okay. I feel like people are gonna get it.
Share the results. So can you see these now, Renee?
Yep. So, people got it. We got smart cookies in the house here. It is River North, Chicago.
It looks like most people guessed the Mission District in San Francisco.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
But right behind that,
38 to 32. Okay. Yeah, we mostly got that.
Yeah. So let me close this here. And yeah, so on our next slide, we reveal the correct answer, which is River North. So Renee, as a Chicagoan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I remember we were talking about this at work too. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, River North, if you guys aren't familiar, is like a very young, hip, too young for me now, area that with lots of bars and places that stay open later. So, and also the proximity to like downtown. So I think it did have a lot of traction like before, a lot of traffic after work. So this definitely makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does. Do you ever find yourself there these days or?
Oh gosh, it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a very long time. But yeah, and you know what? And I'm just gonna take this. So I just wanted to correct that. So the next webinar is actually December 8th. So you have less 1 week less to watch Paddington. So I'm sorry about that. But just a correction that I'm getting from our awesome marketing folks. And the next webinar is December 8th. So just letting you guys know that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Renee.
Mhm.
All right. So what do we have here?
Oh yeah. So the reason I'm on this webinar, besides loving Marie and wanting to co-host with her, is that I've covered a lot of plant-based stuff in Report Pro in our trend spotting series. So, and even stuff that you wouldn't like, that I normally wouldn't have thought so much. I covered next gen C stores. And actually that on there on the cover there is a coconut BLT from a place called Locali in California. And it's really cool. They say that their shop is the love child of like Whole Foods and 7-Eleven. So even in segments where we hadn't seen too much plant-based, I wrote about a lot of new plant-based items in that segment. So that was a
Wow.
really great report there.
Sounds great.
And then plant-based trends. So that on there is actually, so can you tell that that's not a real egg on the cover, Marie? Probably.
I don't know. I think just glancing at it, I don't know if I would notice
Yeah,
that.
from afar, it's but that one actually is like the yogurt and the peach making the
Huh.
egg there. And I believe
Wow.
that's carrot bacon on there. But so this trend watch was all about plant-based trends. So we did plant-based eggs, plant-based seafood, which is huge right now. Lots of mushrooms and like different veggies being scallops now too.
Hmm.
So that was a great report. I covered all those different plant-based trends.
Cool.
And then the next one, I love this cover. I have to toot my own horn here. I thought it was super fun. Found these images, and just like even in our photo stock service, you're seeing so many of these like plant-based animal graphics and things, and just showing how pervasive that is. But so this was our plant-based retail items. And oh my gosh, it's just like I kept finding more and more, like almost everything in retail, you can find multiple plant-based alternatives.
Yeah, I loved this issue. Did you find yourself going out and looking for any of these products after you wrote about it?
Well, not even like specifically, but then like I think also once you cover it, you like notice it more. And then I go to the store and I'm like, oh, there really are like 30 options,
Yeah,
and
cool.
just like gotten so much bigger in the past few years.
Yeah, yeah, awesome content.
Yeah, thank you. And so this is really cool. I think along with that is that there's so much plant-based now. And actually the photo on the right, the Idaho potatoes, was actually at this conference like 2 days ago. I thought this was hilarious that they had this little like, 100% plant-based potatoes now, extra plant-based, extra plants in the potato, kind of that tongue-in-cheek way of saying, gosh, plant-based is so big now. It's almost everywhere. I think some of the burning questions are like, are consumers still wanting all the plant-based? Like, it's just so big now. And like, even the plant-based Clorox, things that you wouldn't normally think of.
Yeah.
And before we had those, like, that there was a meme too about like mashed potatoes that are now plant-based, which is, it's just funny. So, in the next couple of slides, we're going to kind of show consumers eating behaviors, and we're going to kind of see, plant-based has definitely not peaked. It's one of those, I like, what did you say the other day, Marie, that it's not really a trend per se anymore, right? I like how,
Yeah.
well, finish that sentence in a better way, though. I'm going to leave people hanging.
No, I think as I think of it, it's not really a trend anymore because it's gotten so big. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's been a trend for so long, and it's just part of our world now, and it's part of what the food and beverage industry is. And
Absolutely.
it kind of reminds me of this kind of tongue-in-cheek part of it is kind of what happened with gluten-free too. I feel like when gluten-free started proliferating, we started to see it everywhere, and it would be, this is a gluten-free carrot kind of thing, and it popped up in so many places.
Right.
Yeah, so we're excited to talk about all that's happening with plant-based and how it is so much a huge part of our industry now. So, Yeah, we thought we'd begin by looking at how we eat in our country today and our relationship to meat and to plants. So, as you can see here, most Americans identify as being meat eaters. So, sort of an omnivore through and through and eating all different kinds of animal products. But then you also see that right behind that, the next biggest group of eaters is flexitarians. And I know years ago that word wasn't quite as well known, but I think it's quite common nowadays. And that's that person who they don't eliminate meat from their diet, but they just focus on eating less meat. And that can manifest in a lot of different ways. It could be a meatless day of the week, or it could be meat only one day part of the day or something like that. But we started to find that flexitarian also joined by some other diets that are meat limiting diets, like a pescatarian or a vegetarian. When you add those up together, it's almost a third of our population today who are limiting meat in their diets in some way. And when we look at today's youngest consumers, or our very influential young teenagers, early 20s, the Gen Zers of the world, 36% of them are limiting their meat consumption. So we certainly have reason to believe when we look at people's eating habits that we're seeing a shift away from meat and into eating more plant-based foods.
Yeah, that is crazy right there.
Yeah, pretty interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we also took and dug a layer deeper there on eating habits, and we looked into by different protein types, so meat and poultry and plant-based foods, what are people eating on a daily basis? So what we find is looking at the general population, about a third of Americans are eating meat on any given day, and about 1 in 5 people are eating nuts and legumes on a daily basis. And then we start to look at this by generation. So you can see that like the boomer generation eats meat less so than younger consumers, and millennial consumers are the biggest group eating nuts and legumes in any given day. So there are differences by generation, and we do know that protein is such a beloved macronutrient with our population, and people are always looking for more protein. But we also cut this data by an interesting group of consumers, and that was college students. And we found that college students actually across the board are more likely to consume every different type of protein than any other age group of consumers. So, Renee, what do you think about that? Do you have any insight into why that might be?
Yeah, that is very interesting. And they're eating a lot more of the, like you're saying, the plant-based protein. I wonder if that's because, I mean, I think, in college, I can remember too, like you just get such a bigger selection than you might have when you're just at home, or,
Yeah.
is that kind of what you're thinking too for that?
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
some have access to a dining hall, so the stuff is already
Right, right.
prepared. And I
Hmm.
think you could also think that maybe age and education, a combination of age and education, drives students to want to consume more protein. We know
Hmm.
that it is promoted so much in our world that it's so important to have protein, and it is very much so, but it's also the case that most of us do eat far more protein than we need.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I remember a little bit ago, it was like everything had like extra protein, extra protein. And I think there was something that said that everybody almost, is already getting enough protein as is. But actually, we'll get into some slides about functional benefits too. And I think ways that, plant-based companies can also like highlight different things, in addition to like the protein levels.
Yeah, totally. And then also, I guess, digging even a layer deeper here, we looked by category of food and asked consumers, what are your desires? Like, what do you aim to increase or decrease in your diet? And the animal-based products are over here on the left in the pink. So there are a chunk of consumers who are looking to increase meat and poultry, and of course, fish and shellfish in their diets. For meat specifically, that desire has gone down, though, even since last year by 6%. And you can see in the green bars, the areas that people are more so likely to want to increase in their diet. And it really is especially the produce items. So vegetables and fruits are what people are most looking to increase, but it also is things like nuts and legumes and plant-based alternatives as well. And building on that, we can also look deeper into dairy specifically and also non-dairy substitutes. And we can see it here that, again, there's a chunk of people, 15% of people who are looking to increase dairy in their diets today. But that, again, just like meat, has decreased 6% in just the past year. And meanwhile, there's a quarter of consumers who are looking to increase their consumption of non-dairy substitutes, and that is up 5% since just last year. So we are seeing this shift happen, certainly toward non-dairy substitutes and alternatives. On the right here, you can see our menu data about different plant-based dairy substitutes. Almond milk, coconut milk, soy milk, they're all prevalent. And then oat milk has especially strong growth in recent years.
I just had an oat milk latte this morning and it was delicious. And I was gonna say, even in like retail with plant-based items, how you're and on menus, like I feel like I can't remember the last time I went somewhere that didn't have like an alternative sausage, or that you can get your Beyond Burger or your regular burger. And I don't remember the last time that I've like just had dairy milk as an option, like at any coffee shop, right? Like it's just so prevalent now.
That's true. I had an oat milk matcha latte this morning too.
Oh, so good. That sounds delicious. And like, yeah, as Marie was saying, like plant-based milk in general is up 13% on menus over the past 4 years. We've gotten, not just those, the oat milks and the almonds that are kind of like everywhere now. We've got the potato milk, which I'm pretty sure we've covered in past webinars. That's like very unique and interesting. We've got sesame milk, which I have not tried that. Have you tried that, Marie? It sounds so good to me.
I did try a black sesame milk. I was at the Plant-Based World Conference a couple months ago. That was delicious.
Yeah. And like, especially with things like tahini and like black sesame, especially like on desserts and stuff, I could see that being really good in almost like a dessert cocktail or something like that. And then we've had like barley milk as well. So just all these alternatives are continuing to pop up.
Yeah. Renee, didn't you just say you tried barley as a drink and you loved it?
Oh yeah, I tried barley tea, which was delicious.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And yeah, we in that plant-based trend watch issue, I covered non-dairy ice cream, and like I think a lot of the non-dairy alternatives, especially like cheese and ice cream, have like come so far too in terms of like taste that we know consumers are really wanting. And the ice cream, it reaches far beyond just like, well, now there's another alternative to like sorbet or whatever. Now there, it touches on milkshakes, it touches on like we said, cocktails, beverages, all these different implications with plant-based dairy options.
Yeah. And then as we think about drivers behind this, so what is driving all this interest in plant-based foods and non-dairy alternatives? So we'll talk about all of the drivers together today, and we'll say now 2 of the major ones are health and planetary health and environmental health. And consumers tell us the majority of consumers believe that we do have the ability to mitigate climate change and help our planet by simply eating differently. So that is a powerful statistic. And, not everyone feels so empowered to do something like drive an electric car. That's not so easy for everyone, or maybe to cut out all of our plastic use or something. But people really understand that we have an opportunity every time we sit down to eat to have a food item that helps and protects our planet in some way.
Yeah, I think that is such a huge, like you said, push for this is the sustainability.
Totally. Yeah. And these crackers are a great example of that. So this is a company called Moonshot, and this is using that really buzzy term right now called regenerative. I think, Renee, you said at the conference you were just at, there was conversation about regenerative ag. So these
Mhm.
crackers, they're doing a bunch of different things. They're sourcing ingredients that are grown really close to their factory. I think it's within 2 miles. They're growing their wheat and they're sourcing their oils. They have direct relationships with their farmers. All of their packaging is sustainable. So I think we'll see more of this. I've noticed where I live in Seattle, these particular crackers are featured on end caps at grocery stores. So lots of people seeing this type of messaging. And Renee, you mentioned that climate friendly kind of really stands out there. It's like right there.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I mean, right now my toddler son is eating Ritz crackers by the handful, and that's like he's obsessed with Ritz crackers. And I don't know, I could not imagine before that crackers would have climate friendly crackers on there. You know, it's like the third thing you see here after the brand and the type of flavor. So we'll showcase some other retail products too that call out all of these benefits right front and center. And I just don't think I would have imagined that happening before. So these look
Yeah.
delicious. I mean, have you tried them?
I have not, but I want to. And I
Yeah.
noticed if you order them, you can get a full refund on your first box. So
Oh, like just even though you ate them and
yeah,
oh, so it's just
yeah,
free box. Okay, that's nice. Sometimes it's like a if you don't like it, but hey, I like free stuff. So that's
yeah.
it's a call out to try it. And so this is actually really interesting. Speaking of like regenerative, which yeah has been I think our keynote speaker was the one who said at this conference that like regenerative which is a very hard word to say for some reason, is that buzzword. You know, before it was like all organic, all natural, and now it's not just about being, you know, a product that's, you know, friendly to take from the environment. It's actually, it's good for the environment as well, or it's restoring. So I don't know if you've seen or eaten those little like lupini beans. I have you
I
guys tried
have.
that in the comments? They're like snacking beans and they're almost like they're like kind of wet even. Like I think they might be in like the refrigerator aisles. But that's like a big plant-based like snack now.
Yeah.
Um, and this is actually a product that's won like all these best awards for plant-based. And it's called Lupreme. It's made from lupini beans. And I mean, they seem like they're like almost that miracle product. They say, you know, there's no waste to harvest it. It costs less to transform them than into a product than processing meat. And they also like restore the damaged soil. So it requires no water. It seems like one of those things that's like almost crazy to believe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love those beans. My sister texted me. She's like, you have to try these. They're amazing. So,
Okay,
and
I'll have to find them then.
yeah, they surprised me because they are wet and kind of like eating a raw chickpea sort of, but they
Yeah.
taste good. And yeah, they're a delicious, healthy snack.
Yeah, it's kind of a surprise. I love those. We used to have in those in the office, those like crispy broad bean snacks.
Oh yeah.
Those were delicious, like the little sriracha ones. So maybe I'll have to try these too.
Yeah, I miss our office snacks.
I know, right?
We had great ones. And on that note, actually, this is another really cool product that I just learned about recently that I have in my kitchen at home.
Hmm.
So this is the baru nut, and it's from Brazil. So it grows on a tree that's in the rainforest. And so the baru tree is getting cut down with the different kind of bad things happening and cutting down the rainforest to make way for other things. So Renee, have you seen that show on Netflix? I think it's Zac Efron and this other guy named Darren O'Lean, and they're on a search for more sustainable ways to live and sustainable things to eat.
Zac Efron, like the
The
little
singer, I
teapot
think,
there?
yeah.
Oh wow, no. No, that I can't imagine that for some reason. But
Yeah,
I'll have to look it up.
I think it's been around for a couple years now. I forget
Okay.
the name. Maybe someone in chat knows. I've seen a couple episodes and they are traveling around the world and they're looking to find products or ways of living that make our world more sustainable. So this guy, Darren, who's a co-host of that show, he calls himself a superfood hunter. And so he scoured the world for different foods that are good for us. And so he found these baru nuts. And nutritionally, they're great because they're less calories than regular nuts, and they also have higher protein content. So when we think about consumers' interest in protein, that's an awesome attribute. So not only are these nuts good for human health, but they're also great for planetary health because the rainforest needs more of these trees. This particular company has a pledge that for every 5 pounds of nuts sold, they will build another baru tree in the rainforest. So it's kind of really exemplifies the importance of the plant-based trend, and what's driving this is both human health and planetary health. And this is one particular product that can help do both of those things. But just like that lupini bean example and the regenerative crackers, there are more and more products today that are highlighted as helping both human health and planetary health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's called Down to Earth, although I like the comment that it was High School Musical.
Oh, yeah,
You have a
down to
nice little
earth.
crossover.
Cool. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And yeah, so in our research on plant-based, talking to consumers about why this is important to them and what they're interested in, we hear a lot, of course, about the food and beverage products themselves. So why people are looking for plant-based foods and why they're important. But we can't ignore that we also hear so much about packaging, actually, in these conversations. Majority of consumers do associate packaging of their foods with the environment and with the climate. So we are seeing more companies creating products that have environmentally friendly packaging. And I think we have a couple examples here next.
Yeah, so it's not just about the product anymore. It's definitely about, also the sustainable packaging. I mean, it's kind of silly to, like, if you have sustainable water and then you put in a plastic water bottle, it's kind of just like negates the fact. This is a really cool company called Heart Water, and they say they describe it as cold pressed clouds, which is really cute and kind of harkens back to, cold pressed juices and that trend. But it's sustainable rainwater from the skies. So they actually have like the world's largest rainwater harvesting facility. And if you think about it, it makes sense. They say, rainwater is the most sustainable source of water. And then they put them in these really cute aluminum water bottles. And I think they also have like flavored and like sparkling water too. So this seems like a cool one to try.
Yeah, I noticed a related product that's called plant-based water. So it sort of catches your attention when you see it, but it's made from water that kind of evaporates or comes from fruit and vegetable processing when you make cold pressed juices.
Oh, yeah.
That water contains the nutrients from the produce item. So plant-based water is on the shelves these days as well.
Interesting. Yeah. We are seeing a lot of like, and I guess you could call this upcycling. I just saw in the chat someone was talking about that. So I guess you are definitely upcycling the rainwater.
Totally.
And this is a cool place. So, so we're talking about packaging, and then, we're, especially I think with COVID and all of the like single-use plastics, consumers are really, I think once you get all of the, like, especially like curbside pickup and like grocery stores, when you're getting pickup, you're getting all these plastic bags, you're getting the single serve utensils, which is like great from, before with a COVID standpoint, but like not so great for the environment, right? So I think that really brought sustainability and packaging like to the forefront of consumers' minds. So this was a cool company I covered called Incredible Eats. And so they're doing their spin on edible spoons. So, before we were like, I actually think I was drinking out of like a pasta straw earlier, actually here,
Wow.
or it was made of something. It wasn't paper, because the paper ones really do get soggy and kind of icky in my opinion. But so moving beyond kind of like the edible straws or like the better for you straws, these are edible spoons. So that's actually made out of like chickpea and rice flour. So you can eat it with your ice cream or whatever, and then also just eat the spoon. So I think that's like super smart. And I would think these were only like for desserts, like I know they have like a chocolate or vanilla bean one, but they actually have savory ones too. So they have like black pepper or like oregano, lime.
Wow.
spoons. And like, that's kind of just like a really like convenient thing as an operator too, that you're like adding a little bit of something to your like your dish without even really having to like think about it yourself, right? You're adding
Yeah.
another layer of flavor and kind of appealing to people who are like, caring about the sustainable stuff. So that's a
Yeah.
really cool company, I think.
I agree. I feel like that could add a really unique flavor element to a dish if your dish was
Mhm.
one thing and then your spoon tasted like oregano. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. It was like oregano chili or something. And I think they're probably like coming up with regular like other flavors and you can probably choose it. Like I know we've seen before that like mist that you put on your ice cream that's adding flavor. I think there's a lot of like really cool and unique ways people are trying to think of like adding flavor to dishes without having to like actually like prep it and like put it in, right?
Yeah. As far as the utensil thing too, I've noticed in Seattle, if I ever order food, I use that app Toast. Have you ever used that one?
I think so, yeah.
And they, for wherever you order from, they do make you specify if you want utensils or not. Have you noticed
That's
that?
good. That's good. Yeah, I think with Grubhub now, I think you have to actually check, like, do you want napkins and stuff? So I think that's a smart thing too. I think that's like, especially even like water at the tables when you're dining in, sometimes they're like, they just give you water and some people won't drink the water. It's like, it seems like such a small thing, but I do appreciate that people are like, do you want more water? Because if you're about to leave the dinner table, you don't really, need a whole glass of water.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So next, thinking about health benefits related to plant-based foods. So we wanted to understand from consumers, what are the key health and nutrition benefits that they look for in plant-based, knowing that health reasons are really pretty much the number one reason people are choosing plant-based foods. So there has been so much conversation in recent years about the microbiome. Like I remember when I was in nutrition undergrad 10 plus years ago, we didn't really talk about it then. And in
Mhm.
the past 10 years, that's really just blown up, and people understand things like gut health and how our gut is connected to our immunity and how probiotics and prebiotics are important. So that message has gotten through to consumers, and supporting digestive health is actually the number one health benefit consumers want from plant-based foods. I think it's also interesting in this list that protection from long-term disease is right up there, right behind digestive health. But if you look a little further down the list, protection from getting sick is down there towards the bottom. So
Mhm.
that kind of suggests that consumers are choosing plant-based foods with really a longer runway in mind. So they're not choosing a plant-based food so much as, I want this to prevent me from getting sick tomorrow. They're more so thinking that I want to be a healthy person and I want long-term longevity and protection from disease and sickness. There's also some attributes on here that we've seen increase in importance with consumers over the years. So this whole idea of functional foods and how we're in a time when consumers want their food to give back to them, essentially to do something
Mhm.
for them besides just satisfying a craving or providing satiety. So things like supporting healthy skin and hair and supporting our bone health and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And it makes sense with the sickness and like a longer term disease, because I think at first it was like, oh, everything has vitamin C or there's immunity, and it's really gone beyond that, right? So now it's like and we'll cover some of these, like they call out heart health. They come out there's all the commercials I see about like I think they're drugs, but for like memory help and stuff. So I think that some of those cognitive things I think aren't on here, but I think that's going to be maybe like the next wave too, is right. It's like clearer thinking, and we already do have a lot of products like that too.
Yeah. Yep.
And this was a good example. I found this Resync. It looks exactly like an energy drink, but it's a vegan beverage that's plant-based. And as you can see on there, top three things: immunity, heart health, and gut support. And I think there used to be kind of a time where like, oh, you don't talk about gut stuff. You don't talk about digestion, right? Like it's one of those almost like more taboo things. You don't talk about that. But now
Yeah.
it's on an energy drink type of thing. So I think that is really very interesting. And it not just it goes beyond just the vitamin C and everything. I mean, now there's all sorts of products for, I think I keep seeing this commercial. Have you seen like the UTI commercial?
No.
Like on the same talk track of this, like there's a commercial where the lady is like, I've had 18 UTIs in the past year, and so we made this beverage. And just some of these things. I think it's great. It's like, it's kind of like the mental health, right? Like some of these
Yeah.
products or some of these things that we didn't talk about before. Well, you know what? We're humans. We have gut issues. We have urinary, issues, and now there are products to help support that. So just kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. That looks like a tasty beverage. I like the
Right?
packaging of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think this next one too, everyone is I think everyone is familiar with Olipop. I've heard it's delicious. I have not tried it yet, but I've recently saw them in like single servings. So just the can, like I'd love to try just one can, right? But this again, it's like I just never would have thought that before your pop was gonna say supports digestive health, like right on the packaging there. So these sparkling tonics are saying, probiotics, all it's probably plant-based, all of that stuff. So it's kind
Yeah.
of this new generation of functional benefits, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's food as medicine, and so many
Mhm,
plant-based foods are what consumers look to as medicinal items. So botanicals and fruits and vegetables and things like that.
mhm. Yeah, I want to try that. It looks so good.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So I guess continuing the health conversation. So unfortunately, we know that there is a misconception among consumers today that plant-based protein is not as healthy or not as complete as animal-based protein. So again, I remember learning in school, conversation at the time was if you were having a plant-based meal to make sure you had like rice and beans in the same meal, because then you would have all of the complete proteins and amino acids that you need. And that has really been debunked since. And what we know now is that it's more important to think about the plant-based foods that you have over the course of a day. So if you are a person who's having a variety of plant-based foods on a daily basis, you are getting the enzymes and the amino acids and the proteins that you need to have a complete and a healthy diet. So what we find in our recent survey among consumers is that about half of our population believes that plant-based proteins are just as healthy and just as complete as animal-based proteins. And then if you look at certain demographics, like if you remember from the beginning of our conversation today when we talked about meat limiters, so flexitarians and pescatarians, vegans and vegetarians, those people are more likely than the general population to believe that plant-based protein is just as healthy and complete as are college students. So sort of the next generation of trends starters in our world, college students are believing that plant-based protein is healthy and complete. So we're not really where we should be. I don't think here there is this misconception that it's not, but we are moving more toward the majority.
And yeah, so I see some people in the chat saying that, a lot of these plant-based proteins are complete. And yeah, just to reiterate, that is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
There's
Yep.
the myth that they're not, but they definitely are, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
Exactly.
just want to make sure I know it's a little confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a great podcast I just listened to with Dr. Christopher Gardner from Stanford. I don't know the name, but if you Google his name and podcast, he's an expert in plant-based eating, and he just talked with another scientist about this complete conversation and how it's important to consume a variety of plant-based foods in a day, but certainly they are complete and healthy, just like animal-based protein.
Awesome.
Yeah, and along those lines, so it's interesting, we are seeing a lot of different plant-based foods kind of step in today as protein alternatives. So I think when we think of high protein plant-based foods, we tend to think of things like beans and lentils and soy products, edamame, things like that. But what's trending today as protein alternatives aren't always necessarily high protein in their own way. So for example, looking at inception level protein alternative trends, we see hearts of palm. Those are used, Renee, I'm sure you've seen cool examples of hearts of palm as scallops and crab cakes, and banana blossoms are not necessarily, high protein on their own, but they're being used as vegan fish alternatives today. Or jackfruit has been trending for a while as pulled pork substitute or things like that. So Renee, looking at these trending items, have you read about or written about any cool alternatives with any of these ingredients?
Yeah, so we mentioned the mushrooms, like the oyster mushroom scallops and oyster mushroom seafood. But yeah, the hearts of palm, I just tried that palmini.
Oh yeah.
And I actually posted, when I posted on Instagram, I was like, can you guys tell that this is fake pasta? It looks very real, and it is really good. So that's a cool one. I like that one a lot.
Didn't you say Luke liked that too?
He did. Yeah, my son did. Yeah, my son liked it. So I mean, I think it's a really it's really fun to see all these like innovative uses, and like I don't know, I don't know who thinks of some of these, but it's been great to see, especially like with the carb limiting sometimes too, a lot of the carb replacements.
Yeah, lots of creativity out there for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, along those lines, so we are continuing to see whole food plant-based items really star on menus. So something like a cauliflower wing or a cauliflower taco, or we mentioned jackfruit. It's interesting, mushroom bacon. So kind of like Renee, you showed that, I think it was carrot bacon in one of your issues. Mushroom bacon is actually found across every segment of food service. So from QSR to fine dining, there's a mushroom bacon appearing. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. I just had I've tried mushroom jerky before, but I bought a bag yesterday on one of my food tours, and it was delicious. Like, I love mushrooms. I love shiitake mushrooms, and the mouthfeel of it was great. So
yeah.
I'm not surprised that, there's mushroom on here.
Yeah. And here we're highlighting specifically the kind of whole food options of plant-based alternatives that are trending. There are, of course, also tons of cool plant-based alternatives that are trending by way of meat alternatives and things like that. And at Data Essential, we're excited. We've recently launched a really cool algorithm that really helps us track the evolving composition of plant-based alternatives and really pinpointing and tracking what exactly those look like. So we just launched that algorithm recently in our menu trends tool. So if you'd like to learn more about that, please reach out to your Data Essential representative, and we'd love to share some more information.
Awesome. And I think there's just a few examples. I have to hop off in about 2 minutes. I have a flight in 1 hour, and I'm cutting it very close. So everyone keep your fingers crossed for me.
We will. And you're being so generous to be with us here today, Renee. And we're reaching the end too. So maybe we'll be an outlier webinar today and actually end early. But yeah, we wanted to touch on too. So we find in our business that oftentimes when there's a really big trend, eventually there's a pushback to that trend. So we've seen that happen in a sense with plant-based, where so much of the conversation over the past several years was about alternatives that mimic traditional beef or chicken or animal-based food. So we ask consumers, what do you really prefer? Would you want a plant-based food that just showcases itself and its own merits, or do you want an option that mimics a traditional counterpart like a beef or a milk substitute? Most people did say they like that whole food element, but a big chunk of consumers too say they like the alternatives. And it doesn't have to be either or. There's certainly room for both, and there's consumer interest in both of those options today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those like kind of hybrid things. I covered these actual veggies, this product, and I thought it was, I mean, I love pink, I love color. These are like the most fun little burgers. And it's actually, so they are technically, right, mimicking a burger. It still says it's a burger, but they use actual veggies. So they say, it's all veggie based. They've got the purple one, they've got all sorts of different colors. And I don't know. Now that I'm a mom, I have a little toddler and I talk about him incessantly. So I'm sorry, guys, but um, but I do have that stereotype of like, oh, my son loves Ritz crackers, he loves waffles, and like I'd love to get some like veggies into those, right? So this one actually had a like blue breakfast burger before, which I thought was really interesting. And at this conference, actually, they've had company called Veggies Made Great or Veggies Made Good, something like that. And they have little like zucchini muffins, like chocolate zucchini muffins, little frittata egg bites with like cauliflower. So, and these are just, I mean, they look super convenient, right? You don't have to
Yeah.
mix up your own stuff. And so really kind of using that stat that we had.
Yeah, I've been following this company. I noticed they just launched in Kroger, so it looks like they're getting more
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna
involvement.
pick some up.
Yeah.
And this is another one too, wholly veggie. A lot of these people are really putting veggie forward, right? So even if it is like these are cauliflower wings, and they're mimicking kind of those old school like appetizers, late night greasy foods, but veggies. So these are really cool too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, yeah, and so, there's a lot of retail products, I think that have kind of exemplified a lot of the trends that we've been talking about today. But this is an awesome one. I think you were familiar with this one, Marie Shuk, out of DC, and their thing is it's a restaurant chain that has all whole veggie products. So their burgers are made from lentils, I think chickpeas, probably mushrooms, so just kind of taking all of that retail foods and putting them in burgers and making it more accessible to restaurant or to consumers.
Yeah. And this one highlights right on the menu that its protein comes from beans and lentils and oats and other whole food plant-based items. All right, so talking about all those opportunities and innovation that we're seeing in plant-based, bye, Renee. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Sorry, guys.
There are some barriers to the adoption of plant-based foods. So there are a few on this list, but it's really about these top three as really the main barriers preventing consumers from having more plant-based foods at restaurants and at retail. So the top concern is always taste. It harkens back to that notion that taste is king, and it's really important for these products to taste good in order for them to have continued adoption and continued momentum. Especially so today in our inflation environment, we're hearing consumers say they feel like prices are high at the grocery store and they're seeing higher prices at restaurants. So there is an affordability concern as well. So to do what we can to show the value of plant-based foods beyond really just their taste is also going to be helpful. So there's an opportunity here also not to necessarily highlight what we're taking away when it comes to plant-based foods. So maybe not using a word like meatless, because that can suggest we've taken something away from the dish, but instead using terms that really highlight what we've added to the dish and what consumers are getting and all of the value that's there. And then for plant-based foods specifically, texture is also a concern. So that's kind of in line with that taste element where those two attributes need to be there. Thinking of opportunities for plant-based into the future. So we've covered a lot today. There's a lot of cool innovation happening. There's also a big opportunity for this notion of blending plant-based foods, either with other plant-based foods, so something like a lentil, millet, garbanzo bean blend, or blending plant-based foods with an animal-based product. So like the mushroom and beef blended burger is a great example of that one. We find that majority of consumers tell us they are open to eating more blended products and they're interested in seeing more blended items at restaurants. So James Beard Foundation has done a great job kind of helping promote this conversation, as has the Culinary Institute of America and other organizations, talking about the blend and hosting contests. That James Beard has done this blended burger project to have celebrity chefs submit their burger builds, and they have to have at least 25% mushrooms in the burger. So tons of delicious things happening there. Lots of consumer openness and willingness to try these items. So certainly that blend, the notion of blending plants with meat and plants with other plants, is a really big opportunity in this space. And along with that also, so we find that consumers are very interested today in plant-forward dishes. So dishes that really emphasize and celebrate plant-based foods. But they are most interested in plant-forward dishes if they do have a small amount of meat or a small amount of dairy or some type of animal product that's used as a garnish or a flavor element in the dish. So that's kind of right along the lines of this blending opportunity as well. And if we think back to the beginning of the presentation, we saw that most of our population is a meat eater, and then a big chunk of us are flexitarians. Most of us do consume meat in some way, but a lot of us also have aspirations and goals to eat more plant-based foods. So there's a great opportunity in this plant-forward space as well, to have mostly plant-based foods, but also a small amount of meat or dairy in there as a garnish or as an additional flavor element. And then I think this is our last slide today, so we may just end early, which I know is unusual for us in these webinars, but thinking this is a pretty powerful statistic. So we've seen, again, how consumers are eating protein today and how people are looking to consume more protein a lot of the time. And we found in our most recent survey that almost a third of our population actually prefers plant-based protein over animal-based protein. So 28% of the general population is saying that. And then if you start to look at specific groups like millennial consumers, or especially today's college students, then we start creeping even more so toward the majority, where more and more of those people in those groups think that they do prefer plant-based protein over animal-based protein. So I hope that we've been successful in our time together today, showing and highlighting what's going on with plant-based as a trend. We think that it's been here so long, it's such a part of our world now that it's not so much a trend anymore as just a big part of our world in the food and beverage industry. So think we can give you just a couple minutes back of your morning today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. So thanks a lot for being here.